Anyways, I previously lost a lot of weight following Tim Ferriss's diet from 4 Hour Body and got a hold of Engineering the Alpha too. In both books and in many protocols like the attached GQ article about Chris Evans, the diet guy recommends taking a day per week to go totally apeshit on eating junk food. What's your take on this? I know Matt Lalonde wasn't huge on Tim's protocol, but it seems like these protocols are similar, get results, and will help me become a monstrous athlete with the sort of abs ladies fight to eat sushi off of. Cheers to you both, kind sirs.
Nice. You know, I think that these. Just a couple of questions back, I was talking about like a zigzag type of approach to diet, which I've got that terminology was actually Dr. Fred Hatfield, and he was approaching that whole thing from a very empirical, observational standpoint about cycling calories up and then cycling calories down, and he really didn't get into the endocrinology or anything like that, but he found that it worked really well. So I think that there are great arguments for phase shift diets that either you're just cycling calories or you're just you could cycle calories and carbs and by implicitly, if you're cycling carbs, then you're cycling other macros with that. But it's the only problem that I see with this stuff of the go completely apeshit one day a week is that there are some people that I don't want to say this. So a guy getting ready for a movie, for example, they typically have a well-versed trainer that is getting them moving through the process. They're getting paid very, very well to be in very good shape, and if they don't show up in shape, like that, I think that's kind of like making the contract null and void, and maybe even the producers can sue the actor or something. So the people are highly motivated. They're typically working out multiple hours per day, doing all kinds of stuff, doing stuff on the set and everything. Whereas when the average desk jockey schlep looks at this, then they maybe lift some weights a couple of days a week, and then they're like, well, dude, this worked for this movie star, so I'm going to go do my complete hog fest once a week. But the thing is that they don't have that much, of a caloric deficit that they're or just energy output that they're doing. So that one day of a hog fest that in a hard training athlete would be potentially beneficial because we're resetting glycogen stores. We're telling the thyroid, and we're telling the hypothalamus, hey, everything's cool. We're not in a starvation kind of scenario. We're living in abundance. You can shed body fat. We can keep anabolic hormones high. That's not really the same picture. We're talking about somebody who is barely, exercising at all. So maybe the one cheat day is a cheat meal per week versus a cheat day based on an activity level and hormonal status and all that sort of stuff. So I think that the theory is sound. We have some days of lower calorie intake, and then we have a day or a meal of much higher calorie intake, and so we're able to kind of stair step down the body fat just as the body starts getting a little bit weirded out, and maybe we start down regulating leptin production and start having some problems with energy balance and maybe down regulating metabolic activity. We do a big meal or a big feeding day, and that pushes things back up. That totally makes sense, but again, it's all the context. Who are you? What are you doing? How is your sleep? What type of hormonal status are you in? So this is where these things, just having a little bit more of a caveat or I guess a caveat is fine. It's like this thing is appropriate unless it's not. And what I find is that very, very few people are actually training at a level where just like the complete, get yourself kicked out of a buffet line kind of gig. Just aren't that many people who are training at a level that warrants that. So I guess that's my only caveat with that. And then also, clearly gluten exposure and all that sort of jive, which we've talked about that ad nauseum. But I just don't see most people training hard enough to do that. Now, the fact that you're going to a CrossFit gym, even, they have great, it sounds like they're doing really solid programming, which is fantastic. And you're probably gonna, you might benefit from this type of approach. But I would keep gluten-free, and then also just keep in mind, again, this thing works except for the people that it doesn't work for.
Yeah, the one thing I would add, not to be a total buzzkill, but people get worked up about the whole junk food thing. Like, oh yeah, I'm going to eat junk food and get super jacked. And like, to me, a lot of times it's just a fucking excuse to be lazy about that stuff, because you can get a lot of the same effects eating food that's a hell of a lot better for you. I mean, you need a big, super dense, starchy, high glycemic index carb source and shit like that. Like, okay, we'll just eat a giant bucket of white rice. There's a lot of options that don't involve eating home run pies and Krispy Kreme. And I mean, maybe that's just me being a dick about it, but not to say that you can never eat that stuff and there aren't reasons to possibly do it. But like Rob said, I mean, a lot of times people fool themselves about how hard and how much they're actually working, but then also they fool themselves about what they need nutritionally and kind of what their reasons are for that stuff. So just keep that in mind.
Yeah, and I guess to beat this dead horse, turn the dead horse into hamburgers, it were. A lot of times people don't come back from the binge.
Yeah,
they do the binge. They never really come back. And then for myself also, I think the psychology, promulgating the psychology about cheat days, just chaps my ass in a way, because you don't cheat on food. You cheat on spouses. I mean, you cheating is when you have rules and parameters and you make a deal and all that stuff, and that's not eating. And so even just this is why I just get legitimately fucking annoyed when people are like, well, what about a cheat meal? It's like, if you want a meal, we travel a lot, and like if we get to Hawaii, which doesn't happen a lot, but when we do, there's a couple of places that do like Kailua pork nachos.
Nice.
I eat some Kailua pork nachos, by God, and the cool thing is that, they make their own nachos there, and they're gluten free, because oftentimes, fried food, is gluten contaminated, but there's a couple places the stuff is gluten free, and I have some Kailua pork nachos, and I have some cheese on it, and I get some acne from it a couple of days later, but I'm like, damn, that was good, and then I'm over it, because I don't eat for emotional reasons. I mean, I like eating, and we just we ate dinner with Nikki's dad last night, and they made some chicken thighs that had been marinated for 2 days in like a white wine marinade with salt and garlic and all this stuff. And dude, they were amazing, and it was just chicken thighs, like nothing fancy, but they were totally amazing. And I was jazzed about it, both because the meal was delicious and because I didn't have to cook it for once. I didn't have to clean up, so that was great. But I personally don't have emotional connections with food, other than I like eating, but it's not a reward. It's not something that, I worked really hard so I get this treat or whatever. And I know that that's the story for a lot of people, and I'm not talking down to people that are in that situation. But if you are in that situation, then you probably experience the fact that eating, like maintaining good body composition is hard, because you have an emotional connection to the food. And I'm not a therapist, and I'm not a hand holder, so I'm not good at navigating people through that, other than just telling them to cut that shit out and don't do it. But the cheat meal, for me, for a lot of people, what I've seen is that it just creates all kinds of weird psychology, not particularly good behavior. There's a misrepresentation about how much you're actually working out to be able to warrant the types of food you're eating. And like Greg said, if you are kind of caloric restricted for a couple of days trying to lean out, and you want to kick your heels up, then it seems like going to sushi and having, bringing your gluten-free tamari sauce and eating a whole bunch of white rice and sushi or something like that, or, like going to Vietnamese food and having a giant, 8 troughs of pho or something, is a way better option versus almost all the other options out there that people use.
Yeah.